was given to me to give a talk on the genomic selection in crop improvement. I think you must be knowing about this terminology. The term itself indicates that genomic selection means that you are doing the selection, because all the breeders, they are doing the selection based on the phenotypes. It's not a new terminology, we are doing for a long time. But now we are moving toward the using the genome-wide marker information for the prediction of the performance of the lines. So that's the genomic selection. So the word itself indicates what we are going to talk about that. So this is the my institute where I belong. This is the main campus, and this is the agriculture field here. So in 2010 we established, this institute was established by Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, and in 2017 we shifted in this campus. This is a new campus. So I am working there, and this is the agriculture field where we are growing our germplasm material for our doing the association mapping and marker development for starch quality trait. I am working basically starch quality trait, and where I have developed a low glycemic index wheat line, and that's we are planning for going for further for try to put efforts to commercialize those lines. So that's my contribution in there. So with that, so let me go about the difference between this direct selection and the genomic selection. So I mentioned that direct selection is based on the phenotypes. Breeder doesn't require any marker, any kind of genomics, because if their phenotypes, if they can do by any kind of method, if can detect that, they don't require marker. But there are a lot of disadvantages with those kind of selection, the phenotypic based selection, and these are the 5 points I have mentioned here about the heritability. That generally breeders select only those lines which has very high heritability. They don't want to touch the trait which has the low heritability. You must all be knowing about that. And the second one is the epistatic interaction that we cannot do through the phenotypic selection. Genotype environment interaction also, and lot of traits are mostly controlled by the lot of genome-wide factors. It can be a transcription factors, it can be enzyme or many factors, and that also you cannot rule out, you cannot figure out in the direct selection. And of course, direct selection takes longer time, because this longer time you cannot phenotype until phenotype appears at the maturity. Most of these traits are the quality traits or grain based traits. So we cannot do unless it matures. So it's take a longer time for this. And whereas in the genomic selection can rule out all these things. You can have, so genome wide you can do the prediction using all the markers. And second one is that you can increase the genetic gain by considering all QTLs. So what happened in the phenotypic selection or earlier marker assisted selection? Marker assisted selection is the based on basically one marker or few markers. Those are the marker assisted selection. But though where marker assisted selection, we generally focus on the major QTLs. So whenever you do QTL mapping, we always select the QTL which has the major effect. Major effect means like R square value. You must be, if you are doing QTL mapping, you know R square is the QTL effect value. So generally people look always for the which are the highest, which QTL is the highest R square value, like for example, it may be 30% or 40%, whatever the value. So always try to target, but you always forget, we don't take the QTL which has the minor effect. Although those are important QTL, we don't take. So therefore the genetic gain become a very limited in the case of the marker assisted selection. Therefore in this approach, genome wide selection, we use all the markers, whatever the marker is present, we consider there. Therefore, we are considering the effect of all markers, whether it has a large QTL effect or it has a minor. We are considering all. Even if it's a zero effect, still we consider in this genomic selection. Therefore, our genetic gain improves. We improve on the genetic gain on better than the marker assisted selection or phenotypic selection. And it also accelerate the breeding cycles. You know all that marker based selection is always increase the faster time. You can at the time of the seedling you can select on the basis of marker which line is your line, your target line which you are targeting. You can select at the seedling axis, therefore you can reduce the time. So now I will talk about genomic selection, what are these statistical methods and model and are available for this, which you can do yourself. Then genetic selection cannot be done without knowing the knowledge of the next generation sequencing, because nowadays genomic selection is based on the SNP marker, SNPs, because a genome-wide SNP only can be do by the next generation sequencing technology which are available now. So I will just touch about the few next generation sequencing technology which you can use for your genotyping or lines. Next is the LD. LD is a very important, because you can ask how many markers I need, because there may be millions of markers. Suppose you have a germplasm, that you can have a millions of SNPs. We know that we have done, so we know that it gives a millions of SNPs. But you cannot use all the millions of SNPs, because your software, your computer architecture doesn't allow it to do the analysis, because it's a simulation based analysis. Genomic selection, I will come up that later on. Genomic selection is based on the some kind of permutation and combination. It's a simulation based. If you have millions of SNPs, large number of lines, it is very difficult. Your computer will not allow, it will be hang up. You cannot do. Therefore, you need some marker, a number of marker which you can use. So that is called marker density. What marker density we are looking for that? For example, if you have 1 centimorgan of distance, so how many marker you want? 1 marker in 1 centimorgan or 10 marker in 1 centimorgan you can select. So for that you have to know LD. LD is the linkage disequilibrium. I will come to that. It is the linkage disequilibrium is the non-allelic association between pair of markers. You know, suppose those 2 markers are on the chromosome close by, whether they are in LD. If suppose they are in LD, suppose LD is about 1 centimorgan. So you don't need all the markers within 1 centimorgan. We can only select few of those 1 centimorgan LD. That will represent whole 1 centimorgan region. Okay, so that's why LD is very important. Second is the population structure, because the germplasm which we use is very much, some of the lines may be very much related to each other, because they may be coming from some common parental lines. So most of the breeding program, generally parents are very much related to it, but they are coming up one after another. So therefore you have to rule out, because due to that relatedness between this some of the lines, your association mapping, your marker and trait association will be biased. It may be false association. So that we have to rule out with the help of the population structure. And the last is the association mapping. Why we do association mapping? Association mapping is we are doing to find the first location of the QTL and effect of the QTL both. So that information we also need for that. So I will go through that. So first I mentioned about the genomic selection. Why we are going for the genomic selection? The first is that we are targeting all the QTLs, whether it is a large effect or a small effect. So we are looking for all that. Second one is the missing heritability. That means that lot of traits have the very low heritability, so we don't take them. So that's why we call it the missing heritability. So that we are addressing, and population structure, because the genome, this selection word, that marker, that QTL is controlled by so many, a trait is controlled by so many QTLs and they are distributed all over the chromosome. This terminology was today, it was in 1950s where the Bridge and Mathur, they have discussed about in their paper that our trait are, because before that most of trait was the Mendelian, because always considered as a Mendelian segregation. But they pointed out that most of the trait is controlled by, it's a polygenic, it controlled by many factors and which has the small effect. Most of them has the small effect. So they pointed in 1950s, but after that it was not able to use those because there was no SNPs marker technology at that time. So in 2000, Lande and Thompson, they have come up with the marker assisted selection, that is the selection indices, they come with that, and they said they can use this marker assisted selection approach to do the QTL mapping online. This was in 2000. And therefore, this selection matrices was only based on the a few number of markers. It was not based on the large number of markers. Then in 2001, that Musin, this was the Theo Musin, he has proposed that we can predict total genetic values or genetic gain by considering all the genome-wide markers. So this was the first person who has come up with this statistical method and approach for doing total genetic value prediction. So this is a paper, you can go through that and you can read about. It's a lot of stats they have discussed in detail. So I'm not going to discuss, but I will go a brief about that. But you read this paper, it's a very important paper for the genomic selection. This is the classical paper by Bridge and Mathur, where they have talked about the polygenic traits with the small effects. So you can go through the very old paper. So I am going to little bit give the compare between the phenotypic selection, phenotype based selection, marker assisted selection, and this genome-wide selection, genomic selection. So you know about this breeding method where you select the line, all the line, which has all the line, and go for that line selection in F2. You do the selection in F2, and after that F2 you go for the your family to row. So line to row basically, it's a line to row, and then you go. It's a lot of cumbersome job. Who was working on this classical period, they know how much you can have by crossing. You can have thousands of lines, you can have 10,000 or 50,000 lines, and you have to handle all this. Ultimately you get your target. So that is a very time consuming or longer time period. Whereas in the marker assisted selection, you can have a marker. Suppose somebody has developed marker through the QTL mapping or association mapping, you can take those marker which has the major effect. In case, because marker assisted selection, we always go for the QTL is the major effect. So you can select the marker which has the major effect, QTL effect, and in F2 you can select those lines. And once you select the positive lines from F2, then after that you go for the only some set of the lines which has the target QTLs, and you go for further for doing the like breeding normal scale. So now you are reducing the time, and you are reducing also the number of the lines which you take. So this is that. Then genomic selection. So genomic selection is the most important part, is that it has two different type of population. So we deal with the two different type of population. One is, we call it the training population, and the second one is the breeding population. Training population is very important, because you have to focus on this training population. Why training population we have to focus? Because excuse me. So breeding population, because training population, we have to do genotype, we have to do phenotype. We have to we have to do on the training population, and on basis of your genotype, phenotype data, you have to do the prediction. So here we are take all the markers. Therefore, it is called the genomic assisted breeding values. So you must be knowing all about the breeding value. I will come up that breeding values. And so you are predicting the breeding value with the help of the all genome-wide markers. That's why it's called genomic assisted breeding values. So you develop a model. So that means you are training your models. So whatever model, there are a number of models there, and you have to train your model on the basis of genotype, phenotype data, and prediction. Once you train the model, then that model you can use in the breeding cycle. So next is the breeding cycle. You see that one left side, the breeding population. That breeding population, you have your germplasm, breeding lines mostly, and those breeding lines you genotype only. You have to just do the genotype. You don't have to do phenotype. You just do the genotyping, and on the basis of the genotype and the model, which is the trend model, we use that model to predict the lines which has your target value or whatever your superior line you have. So that you can select. So that's why training population is very important, because you train your model and use that model to predict your population of a line which has that marker in the breeding population. So therefore, training population is most important part of that. You can say that what is the number of training population. So generally training population is part of your breeding population. So it is a part of the breeding population. It's not coming separately. It is coming from the breeding population. So therefore, people use different ratio. Sometimes people use 50%, 80% of their germplasm. Your breeding population is a part of your training population. And this is a cyclic process. What happens? When you use the breeding population, that means in breeding you crosses. You make crosses, lot of crosses you do. You can find out a superior line. Suppose you get a very superior line, very high performance line, then you got a new line. Then you can put that line bring it to the training population. That will become a part of the training population. So this is a continuous process, and you always keep on training your population. That means training population always keep on changing. It's a dynamic. It's not that you have 15 line now, you just focus 15. No. Every time you have to keep on add the best superior line, and you can train your model every time, so that it become this model will give very high accurate genomic assisted breeding values. So that's why it's a very important for that. So what are different statistical approach? So there are two different approach for that. One is the parametric method, otherwise the non-parametric. I am just talking about the parametric. In non-parametric, you consider, so in parametric you only consider the additive effect, we remember. So in this parametric model, we always go for additive genetic effect. You don't go for the non-additive. If suppose, you can add the non-additive, but suppose you have lot of epistatic environmental effects, trait to trait effects. Suppose you are targeting 4 or 5 traits or 10 traits. So you want to take all the trait together. You always like to have the all trait I can take together with the genotypic data. So, and second one is the multiple environmental effect. Suppose you are growing this line at different location. So multiple environment effect. So both if you want to consider, then you go for non-parametric methods. That is the non-parametric methods. So there are two different methods. One is additive effect mostly, that you can use for these methods. If suppose you want to target multi-trait and multi-environment together, then you go for the non-parametric test. Okay. So here I am going to only discuss about the metric parameter. So there are 3 different approach. There are 4 or 5 approaches, but I am just focusing on the most important one. Is the most commonly used is the stepwise, ridge regression, and Bayesian. So Bayesian is the most commonly now used. Now one more method is come up, that is called machine learning language. That is basically it's a computer programming, machine learning programming. So now they are using for that. So for prediction, because prediction is always based on the machine learning language program, and statistical is based on the Bayesian method. So stepwise regression method was most commonly used in the marker assisted selection, and here the major problem is that they always look for markers which are significant. If suppose there is a marker which is not significant, therefore they don't consider those. So that's why it doesn't consider the marker with the small effects. That's why stepwise regression approach is not appropriate. Still people use for that because they don't have the facility for doing large scale genome-wide sequencing. So only they have few markers, they can go for stepwise selection for that. The second one is the ridge regression. It's a ridge regression bloop. So you know all the bloop is the best linear unbiased prediction. You know that predictor and estimators. So this is the bloop. In the ridge regression, they consider marker as a random effect rather than fixed effect, and they consider the variance of all marker effect towards the 0. The shrinkage is towards the 0, and the most disadvantage of this model is that they consider this as a common variance for the all marker. That means each marker has the same variance. Each marker effect, if you have a distribution of marker, it always consider the same variance for all the markers. So that is not possible, and it is you assume that it's not a realistic because all the marker effect has a different effect. It can have a different distribution. Each marker has a different variance. So therefore, ridge regression is now taken over by the Bayesian approach. So I am going little bit history about that simultaneously, stepwise, ridge, then I am coming to Bayesian. Those who are the scientists, statisticians, they always look for the better method every time. So every 5 years you see in publication they come up with a new method. So Bayesian was that to rule out those that they cannot be the common variance for all the markers. To rule out that they come up with the marker, they consider that each marker has their own variance. So therefore, we have to take all the variance, all marker has all variance. That was their assumption. On that basis, they have come up with the variance on the basis of the prior distribution. So those who knows about the Bayesian method, you have to have a prior distribution of your variance. That is a requirement. So prior distribution variance has the mean and it has a variance. So what happened? The mean and variance of the prior distribution is very close to the marker mean and variance. So that's the most important part of that. And they come up with the two different methods, that is called Bayes A, Bayes B. Now I have seen last couple of years they come up with the Bayesian C method. So these are the different methods. So Bayesian A method is based on that they considered towards the 0. They completely don't see all the marker which has 0 effect towards the 0. So there is very much better than the ridge regression, but still there is a problem because we are not considering the marker which has the 0 total effect. In Bayesian B, they come up with that all the markers, even it has a 0 effect, they consider those markers also in their model. So therefore, Bayesian framework, Bayes B model is the latest model is come up with that. Apart from there are other methods I am not going to discuss, like you come up with the lasso. Lasso is list absolute shrinkage and selection operator. So that is another method for doing that, but those are the least square method. Those are not based on the prediction like simulation basis. So Bayesian approach is basically it's a simulation. Suppose your line is you are taking 300 lines, but if you suppose you always look for that, suppose I have 1000 line, what happened? You can have a better prediction for that. So you cannot have that 1000 line, because suppose you are working a very, like for example millet, like kodo millet, all those is a very few line. You cannot have the large number of variety, large number of jump lands. It has only few. So in that case, how will do? So you require simulation. So Bayesian approach, you always do the burning. You made a replication. Suppose I take 5000, 10,000. So in each replication, what happens? They will remove the phenotype data and they replace with some other data on the basis of the distribution. It will not disturb the distribution. And then they will estimate the parameters, all the parameters of that. Then you suppose then second cycle, third cycle. So you can select 10,000 or 50,000 or 1 lakh, and then you have a better prediction value. So that's why Bayesian approach, you need a very high throughput computer if you have a large number of marker and large number of lines. So this is the comparison between other way about this marker assess selection and genomic selection. So in genomic selection, I mentioned about that model prediction is most important. So if you can see that, so you see this here, this one, you have training population. The model selection is most important. You have to train your model, because training the model is very important. Once you train the model, that's why in the genomic selection and marker assess selection, the difference is, the most important difference is you're training your model. So you have to train the model. And the second, in marker state, you just need a QTL. Once you have a QTL, we go for the selection directly for that. So this is a major difference. So now question is that how you assume that there are different method of the genomic selection. How you assume that your prediction by this method is very accurate. How will do that? So because suppose you have the marker data, on the basis of you have selected that this line has the, this line can be this value of your phenotype. Suppose you have already trained, so you know that each marker has some effect. So suppose that marker is present in some line. So what you assume that, okay, this is the prediction. So that will be the my data. But suppose if you do really you do that phenotype and you see that what you have observed the phenotype, what you are predicting with the help of marker is how much correlation is between them. If high correlation, that means it's a very high accurate. So on basis of the correlation, you predict that where model is very accurately predicting your phenotype or not. So that accuracy, so this prediction is based on the correlation between your observed value and estimated value, genomic assisted breeding values. And you can see that Bayesian has given the better result. So this is the publication from Musin et al. They have proposed that they are getting the very high accuracy value when you are using the Bayesian based approach. Whether in case of the blue and list, it is a very low value. So this is the way you can do yourself. Suppose you are working on this genomic selection, you always try the older model. Don't focus on just Bayesian approach. You try your BLOOP, ridge regression BLOOP, or you can use the Bayesian A and B, and then you can try to see which model is giving better prediction. So always try for all the models, don't try only one model, and then on that basis you can select which model is giving on the basis of your correlation analysis. So this is the cyclic process I mentioned about that. You have the line development, that in breeding line means you are developing always a new breeding lines, or there is a training. So this is a cyclic process. So you can say that you are keep on training your model. You can see that you are always try to train the model, training model. So you have a phenotype, genotype, and you always keep on doing. Suppose new lines are coming, you can put in this, and you can again develop a new model and then come. So this is a cyclic process. Always keep on putting lines which are very superior line you have observed and keep on writing. And whereas that line development process is the breeding cycle, you have to just genotype. On the basis of genotype you select that. This is also a cyclic process. So if suppose in the breeding cycle, if we identify some important line from there, then you can put that line into your training population. So this is a very cyclic process. So I am going to little bit statistical concept which we use in the genomic selection. So we can start with this genetic model. So you all know the genetic model. The phenotype is the sum of the genotype and environmental effects. In case of if you explain this in the term of the variance, so the phenotypic variance is the sum of the genotypic variance and environmental variance. And suppose if there is a genotype and environmental effect, then we always take that interaction as the covariance. So you can see the two G and into it. This is the variance decomposition of the genetic model, and most of the marker access selection we always go for the narrow based heritability, like this narrow based heritability where you can the this broad sense and narrow sense. So in broad sense we just consider the genotypic effect divided by the total phenotypic, where in case of the narrow sense we always take additive effect. No, you always take additive effect divided by the total phenotypic. That is the narrow sense heritability. So this is the model in case of the single marker. But if suppose you have the large number of markers, suppose, so what happened? Your additive effect is coming from all the markers. In case of there, it is only for the marker selection, only one marker or two marker. But in case of the genomic selection, your additive effect is coming from each marker. If suppose there are thousands of markers, it's the additive effect of all the thousands of markers in this. So therefore, you are taking all the variance of all the markers, whether it's small or big. So you are considering this. And this is the breeding value. You all know that this is breeding value, and this is the M is the mean population of the data, and it's a heritability, narrow sense heritability with your individual lines phenotype minus the population mean. So this is the typical breeding value equation. You all know, but you see that one thing that always considering the narrow heritability. And they are not, in this equation you can see they are not considering anything about the environmental or residual effect. So that is a disadvantage. Therefore, genomic selection is come up. There we are considering everything. They are considering the residual effect also. So I am coming with the next slide. So this is the before that this is a slide. This is a typical marker access selection for single marker. So single marker has two alleles, either 0 or 1, or you can say A or whatever if it is a SNP marker, maybe C or A. So this is, you distribute, suppose you have 100 lines, so maybe 40 lines you have the 0 value. So what is the phenotype? And then you see the distribution. The second one is the marker which is another allele, and you distribute their phenotype, you get the normal distribution. So this is the equation. This is a typical equation for the single marker, biallelic marker. This is a biallelic marker. This is the equation. But in genomic selection, you take not only single marker, you put all the markers effect. So this term is for every marker, plus you still have your residual EI. That is your residual effect, including the environmental effects. So that is there. So therefore, in case of the marker assisted selection, they were taking only additive effect, not the residual effect. But in case of genomic selection, you are not only taking all the marker effect, but also your residual effect. So what happened? They have come up with this model, this is the model of the prediction. Now, you are using large number of genotypic data, maybe millions, thousands of the genomic data on a very small number of lines, like 200, 300 lines. Generally, people, if you see the publication, they only focus on 150, 200, 300, maximum this number of lines for association mapping for this. So therefore, you have only 100 lines, 200, 300 lines, but your marker data is a very high number. So there is always a problem of overfitting. So you always have a problem of overfitting. I don't know who has, anybody has working on the regression. If you do the multiple regression has this overfitting problem if you have a large number of markers. So to rule out to this overfitting, they come up with one penalty. So they are putting the penalty with the residual. So you see that gold round mark, you can see this one. So this is the, you can see the round one, this is the penalty they have put in there, so that you rule out the, you reduce the effect of the overfitting due to the large number marker. That was called large p-value and a small n number. So that is this. So this is that, so you can go through that. So this is a publication, you can, if you want to go read more about that, you can go to that. They have given more detail about the stats. And this is the comparison between this, this different method of the genomic selection. So these are method, this is the parametric method. So what I discussed, they are considering the most important part of this is a small effect QTL. You see the small effect QTL, all this method is taking care of the all the small QTL effects. So this is the comparison of that, you can go to that. And this is the summary of the some of the publication which come in the in PubMed. You can see, so we can see that training population. I mentioned about two important factors. One is the size of the training population, and second one is the accuracy of your models. So you can see that most of the training population people are using up to 90%. Somebody has used this one, they have used all that. So all the breeding population they have used as a training population. So you see the Mays paper, they have used all. So there are different percentage of the size of your training population, and then your model prediction. So accuracy, I mentioned that how we estimate accuracy, it is a correlation matrix, correlation between the your observed and your estimated value. So that is the prediction. So these are the differences between, I think these are for the marker selection and genomic selection. So that I have already mentioned. This is just for your summary of those. This is the this is my publication. It is in the book chapter. So I prepared this for genomic selection in crop. This is the title of this, and this is by my student by Sabba. So we have developed this model. It's a little bit more detail about that. So if you want, you can go to that. It's still in the press. It is not come out. So this is I have given in genomic selection, what are the different approach which are targeting. So you can have high throughput genotyping, high throughput phenotyping. So statistical. So this is the a kind of the relationship between the different branches of the science with your in genomic selection. So now, so I have discussed about the what are the different model for genomic selection. But genomic selection is based on the association mapping and LDIM. So I will come up with that. Okay. So that genomic selection was part we have finished. What are the models? Now I am coming with the next generation sequencing approach, because for genomic selection you need to have the SNPs marker, SNP marker, and how we can do that. So I will discuss about some example of short read sequencing where we can generate 50 to 300. Generally people go for the 100 base pair, and second one is the long read sequencing, and this long read sequencing is the only for the doing assembly. For SNPs you don't need those. For SNPs you only go for that first one, short read sequencing. So how the next generation sequencing technology, this is the method, this is the called sequencing method. I think you must be knowing about the Maxam Gilbert and dideoxy method by Sanger. So you know both the method, that is a two different method. But this is the another method, this is called pyrosequencing method. This is the method which revolutionize whole sequencing approach. So this is the method which take into the next generation sequencing technology. This was came up in the 2005, this technology. And with this method, first one was come 454 sequencing. Now that sequencing method, the instrument has now stopped. It is not available in the market, but the only is available which are using that pyrosequencing method is the Illumina sequencing. So you must be knowing about the Illumina, which has coming of this. So this is the genomic, you take the genomic DNA, you fragment it, then you put the adapter for the indexing and sequencing adapter. After that, that is the flow cell. You add in that flow cell your this adapter added fragment, and then you do the bridge PCR. That is most important part is the bridge PCR. You see the bridge. One end will, they design adapter in such a way that one end will have a different adapter, other end will have a different adapter. One adapter will add this side, a second one in other place. So what happens? It make a kind of bridge, and then after that they do the PCR, that is called bridge PCR, and then they make a cluster. So each cluster has thousands of same representation of the sequence. On the basis of the information, consensus SNP on the cluster, you call the SNPs. So that is the bridge PCR method. And the second important part, that how they do the detection. They label all the oligos. So 4 nucleotides, 4 has a different color. So once you add this, there is a color, you see the color, and your instrument will detect whether it is A or C or G or T. And after that, what happens? They have to remove this one. If we can't remove, they cannot move forward. So that's why we call it the reverse terminator. In Maxim Gilbert and Dideoxy-Sanger method, it was the terminator method. It terminates. But here it is called reverse terminator. It's very important to know about. If somebody can ask the question, what is the reverse terminator sequencing method? So this is the why it is called reverse terminator method. Okay, and they are doing only reverse because to rule out the false sequencing. To remove the effect of the false, they were using the terminator and reverse terminator approach. So what are the different, I am not going to detail because it will take a longer time, there are more detail. So I just give about that you see that these are the different sequencing platform. It depends upon how much data you need, you can select those sequencing platform. So at Nabi we have MI6, it can generate about 15 GB data. But recently I visited, they come up with the NovaSeq. So they come up with the NovaSeq new sequencing platform that can generate up to 6 TB data. You can understand it's a 6,000 GB data you can generate in a single reaction. See how powerful, how throughput this machine is that. Recently, last Monday I was in IHBT. So Dr. Ram Kumar Sharma, who has this platform, has only few lab in India those have that sequencing platform. So you can do the genomic selection, using that platform. And this is very cost effective per sample, per data point is very cheaper than any other. So now sequencing is not a problem. Problem is the computer. Because if suppose thousands, millions of SNPs, you have hundreds of lines. And if you do the Bayesian approach, you need a very poor HPC cluster. We call it high performance computing platform. So you require, that is the most. Sequencing now price has so much go down, and that you can do within a couple of days you can have 6 terabytes of data. And this is the another long read you don't need. So for SNPs you don't need this method. This is only for doing the genome assembly. Suppose you are doing genome resequencing genome assembly, then you go for the longer read. It is the one is the PacBio system. This PacBio is this is the nano-based pore-based method. And one thing is that this is called real-time sequencing platform. So these are the real-time. Both the method is the real-time sequencing method. First one is the PacBio system, where you have a tag DNA polymerase. You see that on the bottom of that, the flash is coming. That is the tag DNA polymerase. And on there, each pore has the single tag DNA polymerase or single molecule. That's why it's called single molecule. So you get the data from all the single molecule. And the second one is the nanopore. Nanopore is based on the porine. You know the porine. Porine is a kind of protein which is present in mostly in the bacteria. From where? So they are using that porine method to doing nanopore sequencing method. So nanopore is giving the longest read. Right now they are giving the longest read. They say that they are claiming that their single fragment can go up to the 200 kilobase. So 200 kilobase single read they can generate. Where this average nanopore, they are claiming they can go up to more than 50 kb. But in case of the PacBio system, they are claiming that they can average right now is 20 kb average. They can go up to 40 kb mostly. I am not going to multiply, these are the publication, you can go through that. This is called real-time DNA sequencing. And this is the flow cell you have. So this is the format, this is the sequencing method. So they are using JMW, it's called zero wave guides. So they are using zero mode waveguides for doing the sequencing. And each of them has about, right now the latest one has 1 billion zero mode waveguides. So I am not going to detail about this, but I can come up with the PCR which they use for the longer read. How they can generate a longer read? The longer read, for generating a longer read, they use a adapter. The adapter make a loop kind of a structure. It is when adapter, they both the end, they put the adapter, and that adapter make a loops. Okay, and when they make the loop, they can add the tagged DNA polymerase and they are going to do the PCR. That's why they can get a longer reads. That is the approach by doing loop PCR to generate a longer reads. So this is the machine. You can see that they have come up with the Sequel 2. This machine has about 8 million smart cell, SMRT. That means single molecule real-time sequencing method. That's why it's called SMRT cell. So you can see how much data they are generating. That they can generate 50 billions of bases. They can generate with this. So, but this is the only good for the genome read sequencing, and this is the nanopore sequencing. So they are using the porine, and this porine has one exonuclease so that it can separate the strand. Due to the exonuclease, they are using an exonuclease there. They remove that one strand, and then another the second strand will go inside, and they use one kind of electrolyte solution. Basically, it's a electrophoresis. This approach is basically electrophoresis. They passes through the electrophoresis under the different potential, and then they can detect which base is coming. So what happened? Whatever the base is, one base will come. So what happened? The electrolyte, the potential of electrolyte change. So they have already standardized the potential of all the 4 bases. On that basis, they can detect and they can do a longer range. See, they have a different type of this, the mean ion. That mean ion is called mean ion, grid ion, and ProMeth ion. So mean ion is they can generate right now. They are claiming that it can give a 15 GB of data. You can put in your laptop and you can sequence it. So we have used that. You just put yourself very simple method. 3 hours you can have a data. You can generate 15 GB of data. You just put your solution. There is a simple reaction for that 1 hour for sample preparation. Once you done, put in there is a hole there. You can add your sample and you just plug in the laptop. In 3-4 hours you have data is there. So grid ion has the 5 of that mean ion, and this has a 48 of this methion. And they have come up with the last year by December they come up with the fungal. This fungal you can use with the mobile. Suppose you want to generate 2 GB, 1 GB or 2 GB of data, you can just plug in this. Suppose you are working on Arabidopsis. The genome size is 125 MB. You see, you can do 100x generate easily. You can do using just mobile. You just plug with the mobile, put the data, and your data is there. So this has come up with now December they have released this line. So and this is a very flexible system for that. You can suppose you want to stop in the middle. Suppose you got enough data. Suppose you want looking for 1.5 GB. So suppose in 2 hours you got the data. So you don't have to go move forward. You stop there. And you can reuse this again. Real-time analysis. You can read. What reads is coming up. And suppose you are doing a candidate gene. Suppose you are sequencing a QTL region. Suppose a QTL region is about 5 centimorgan. Suppose it has about 200 genes. Suppose you know that one gene is our target gene. So keep on doing. Suppose your sequence, the gene which you are targeting has been already sequenced, then you stop it. So that's why it is called the read until your sequencing can't. So it is a very flexible system. So I'm now LD. So LD is the measurement of the non-random association of allele at different loci. So it is basically chromosome wise. Let's say single chromosome may have 1,000 SNPs. So you can do the pair wise of thousands, one by another, then like that pair wise. So that is the LD is the measurement of the non-random association of this. So I am not going to merge this. These are people are using different terminology. If you go to the publication, people are sometimes using allelic association, gametic phase disturbance. These are all the terms they use for the linkage disequilibrium. How you measure the linkage disequilibrium? So this is the Levantine. They have proposed this D, how to measure. So D is the, this is called, I think marker is not here. No? So D is the deviation, measurement of deviation, and so this one is the first one is the giving the parental combination. So allele which has the parental combination, because this is the, you remember, this is between the two locus, it's a pairwise. So one locus have one allele, the second locus have first allele, and next one is the second locus of first allele and second locus of second allele. Sorry, first locus of second allele and second locus of second allele. So this is called parental combination, and that is called recombinant combination. Can I put some drawing? So let I come. I have this. So it's called the parental combination, and that is called the recombinant combination. So any kind of deviation between any kind of deviation from this is called LD value. So what happens? This LD value has lot negative value, and this has already is very difficult to compare between the pair of the markers, because it always gives sometimes negative values. It doesn't reflect how to do the comparison. You cannot do comparison. So they come up with the normalized R square value. This is called the LD, normalized LD value R square, where you have the square of the deviation divided by the allele frequency, each allele frequency, multiplication of each of the allele. So marker 1, A1, A2, marker 2, B1 and B2. So both, so this value is always between 0 to 1. So you always get a fraction of between 0 to 1. Then you can compare between that, which LD has the strong, where is the LD is weak. So this is between the resolution. So suppose you have your germplasm is very highly diverse, the last one, you see the graph, you need large number of marker to do the association map, LD mapping. And once you get the marker which is linked with your trait, that means that is very strongly linked with that, because it is very narrow. When I see the large number marker, where in case of the breeding population, where the genetic diversity is very low, you need very few markers. You can easily detect the QTL, but you don't know where is the QTL present. You don't know. There may be that whole region has 4 or 5 markers. You don't know where is the QTL. It's a big region. So therefore, your germplasm should be highly diverse. So once you find the QTL, that means very linked with the trait. See the peak of that. Only one marker is there, and your trait is linked. So this is the example I can give. So see that in case of the complete disequilibrium, this is the 2 allele, and this is another locus. So locus 1 has the 2 alleles, locus 2 has the 2 alleles. If suppose if you are getting a parental combination, you see if you are getting a parental combination and you don't come the recombinant combination, that means your LD is very strong. It's a 1, value is 1. And whereas if it is a equilibrium, that is random, the frequency of your phenotype will be 3 and 3 for each. There are 4 genotypes and each have the equal frequency in your crossing. So that means your LD is not there, LD is absent. So this is the example of that LD. I am going to tell about why LD is important. You must know about the LD decay and LD extent. So LD decay is that you can see that where is LD is coming. Most of the LD is coming down here. That means it is coming about the maybe 30 MB. So that means the decay of LD in your population is up to 30 MB. So you can have only few markers within the 30 MB. You don't need much. You don't need require the large number of markers within this region. So that is LD is very important in your population to decide how many markers you want to select for your this. You see that LD extends. So this is the one chromosome, and these are the SNPs marker. So this represent that this is the LD between these two marker, and that was the last one. This one indicate between association LD between this marker and last marker on the that tops. So now you can see that this marker is LD. So you don't need all the markers for your selection. You can only take few of the marker and you can do your selection. You don't need all the marker because these are all in LD. So that is why LD is very important to know about in your population. This is my paper I published in 2010 when I was doing postdoc, and you see that I have given that suppose the marker which are in LD, all this marker LD, their p value is very low. That marker is significantly associated with the disease resistant genes. It was on a spot blotch resistant genes, you see the p value. Those markers which are away 1 centimeter away from that, those are not in LD and they are not associated with a marker. So you can see that I don't need all the 5 markers, I can select only 1 marker, you can do for selection. Population structure analysis, this is a typical example of the structure analysis. If you do the structure analysis, suppose I have taken 250 Indian wheat varieties. So that is this is the wild barley, is my postdoc example, where I have 318 wild barley germplasm from 19 different countries. And from that I have see the structure analysis, you identify, you see each color represent one subpopulation. So you see how many subpopulation we have present. So you need this information to do association mapping. So clustering you can use, basically population structure analysis is the cluster analysis, but it is based on the Bayesian approach, permutation and combination based analysis. But there are classical method is available where you can do either you can do UPGM method where you can classify, group your lines, multiple variant analysis you can do like principal component and principal coordinate analysis you can do. So this model you can also use for your structure analysis, but structure, population structure, they are saying that this population cannot give the true value of the prediction because the line which you have taken is only Lipton line. You know, you suppose you can have a large number of line that clustering may be different. That's why they go for the population structure analysis using the Bayesian based approach. So this is the population structure. You can use the software structure. This is a software was developed by Pritzker et al. In 2000. You can. And how you decide that how many subpopulation you are present. Suppose I have 100 lines, how I can know that how many number of subpopulation there. So when you do the structure analysis, we always assume how many lines are there, how many lines are there. Suppose I assume it's in a structure program, if you use the structure software to do a structure analysis, you need the marker data. You take the marker data, you do the analysis, but before analysis you give some information. One of them, how many subpopulation you want to see. So generally we say 10 or 20. Suppose I give the number of subpopulation maybe 20, you know. So that is based on the projection that is coming from the different location. So you assume that, and then you plot the log likelihood of the probability of the data. This is you get from the software, and then you plot. So if you suppose assume number of only one population is there, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you plot their value. You see that the peak where you get the peak, this is called the ascending peak, and once it start going down, then you can stop there, and then that means number of subpopulation is 3 in your population. But this is not very clear cut give that, you sometimes very close, so you don't find that. So therefore in 2005 Evans et al. They come up with the ad hoc method. In this ad hoc method they plot the lambda k value of each subpopulation, and they say that once you get the highest peak, that is your number of subpopulation. So here you can see I have a number of peak, but we selected this one because this is the highest peak. So that is a very clear method for deciding how many subpopulation are data. Because this is most important, because once you decide this subpopulation, then the matrix of this subpopulation we can use as a covariance in association mapping. So that's why a structure is very important to do, to know the number of subpopulation. I am little bit going fast, So anyway, so this is I am coming with the association mapping approach. So now you understand LD, how to do the LD. So R square value you can do, normalize R square value you estimate between the marker all along the chromosome, and then you can decide the marker density for your genomic selection. The second one is the structure, population structure. Population structure is very important because that will rule out the effect of your relatedness, because some of the lines are very closely related in a structure, and that will give a false positive. So to rule out false positive, you have to do the population structure analysis. And the third one is the association mapping. Association mapping is very important because you have to see how many QTLs are there, and where are located and what are their effects. So that important to know that, and for that you have to do association mapping. So you know that a biparental linkage mapping population is only based on few crosses. So their recombinant are very long, so it's very difficult to develop a marker, where in case of the association mapping the germplasm coming from large number of population. You can understand that they must have come from someone, maybe millions of years, maybe 10,000, 20,000 years back they must have come up. But you remember so many times they must have gone to the crossing and recombination they have gone. So whatever the recombination you are finding is a very narrow, the fragment is very narrow. You can see the multicolor is a very small fragment. So therefore detection of marker is more powerful here. Although you need large number of marker to identify the association, once you got the association with the marker, that means that is a historical association, because it is recombination is coming from a long time. Where in case of that, this is the recent recombination, your recombinant are very longer, and in next generation you can lose the QTL. Therefore you cannot, suppose I in one breeding population, mapping population I develop a marker, but suppose somebody want to use that marker in other genetic background, it will not come up. Your chances are very high to lose that. Because why? Because this is fraction is very longer recombinant. It will go on the, when it will crossing over, it will lose that, the marker will somewhere else, QTL will go somewhere else. That's why people always say that, oh, he has developed the marker, but that marker is not working in my case. Because that is not that he was wrong, he was right, but due to this reason. That's why association mapping is always recommended to use in a larger genetic background, because you have hundreds of lines coming from different regions, and therefore whatever your marker is find is a very strongly linked to your trait, because it has coming through after the different genetic background effects. So I am not going to much difference. You can go to the literature, you can go about this, what is the difference. So it's always have a type 1 error that you can do through the structure analysis, and type 2 error that will rule about different models, we can use that. Now association mapping is, people are using different type of population. Somebody using the landrace, exotic, wild relatives, somebody using the breeding population also. So sometimes you use a synthetic population, then you do the mutation population. You can use the mutant population like EMS induced mutant population. You can use the nested association mapping NAM population. You must be knowing about the NAM. One founder lines you cross with the 20 or 25 or 30 different lines. That is called the nested lines. In case of the MAGIC, it's a multi-parent analysis. So I just give you one example of this nested association mapping. So this is the, in case of the maize corn, you can see this B73 is the founder line. It's a very important line. Who are working on the maize, they know how important this line. And they have crossed with all the latest lines, and they come up with this nested population. Where in case of the MAGIC population, this has been used in the rice, and you see they have taken 8 different lines, and they do the pairwise crosses. So one is got the F1 from 2 lines, then you cross with the another progeny of the 2 other parent line crosses. So you combine, basically it's a pyramid type of thing. So you can cross, and we come up, you develop a line which you can use for the association mapping. So this is called the MAGIC population. Method of association mapping. So this is the population structure based association mapping approach. There is another one called the familiar relatedness based approach, that is a KM value, and this is a QAM, and another one is called admixture, that means mixed association mapping approach, that is QKAM value. I am coming little bit detail later on. So if you want to really read about the all different model for this association mapping, you can go to this paper, Stitch et al. 2008. This is the genetics paper. You can go through that. They have described about all this model. So generally, people used to do ANOVA. ANOVA is the best method. People use classical method. This is the kinship method. This is based on the this is the pedigree based method, coefficient of ancestry. They use that. Then there is another model. So you see all these models you can use for association mapping, and then you can decide which model is good for association mapping. So I am coming next slide. How you know that which model is fit for your population? So you can plot their expected value which you got from using this model, and then you have observed p value, and then you can plot. So a straight line, the model which is giving a straight line between these two will be the best model for your association mapping of it. So you can see the this is a triangle, you can see that PK and this value QK is the better best model rather than ANOVA. This is the ANOVA. ANOVA is giving not fit with the this relationship between these two. So on the basis of this relationship, a straight line, you can select which model is good for this. So in case of the association mapping, you also try this different model and then you decide which model is good for that. So I am just giving little bit about this. So people have earlier used to this is the TD ANOVA. You must be knowing about this classical method for doing association between marker allele and your phenotype, and this is the different, and this is the first one which come up based on the structure based population. Structure based was the genomic control and structure association mapping and logistic regression and general linear model. These are the model which is based on the for doing the structure based analysis. But what happened? But still there is a problem in a structure based association mapping, because there are a lot of lines which has the familiar relatedness. That means they have a common progeny, and that give a very false positive, and therefore to rule out that, we come up with another model called mixed linear model. And this mixed linear model, they use this model is called QK, QK or PK. QK means this is a structure data and this is a kinship coefficient, and kinship coefficient is how you determine kinship. Kinship you determine using the marker data. And you assume that the lines are unrelated. The lines are very unrelated. That is the assumption. And so that is the kinship coefficient, and P is the principal component. You can take the principal component also as a matrix for doing association mapping, mixed linear model. So a structure with kinship or principal component with kinship. So structure Q is the structure, K is the kinship. If you use these two matrices, it's called mixed linear model, and this model was proposed by the Yu et al. In 2006. It is a Nature Genetics paper, and the P and K, these two mixed model was proposed by the Zhang et al. In 2007. So this is a true approach. But after that, people also come up that the assumption of kinship coefficient is not very true, because they assume that lines are unrelated. It cannot be possible that no line will be unrelated. Some of the lines may be related. So therefore, they come up with the kinship matrix based on the threshold value. They use different threshold value to determine the kinship coefficient. That's why it's called kinship threshold value. So this is the summary of different matter. So this is very brief about that. If I want more detail, it take longer time. This is the model for prediction model for association mapping on the basis of the marker matrix or effect of marker and all the subpopulation. That is the subpopulation effect. So you can use all the different terms to predict your model for association mapping. And this is the summary. So basically, genomic selection is the main target, is to see the effect of all marker, and that's why you can have a better genetic gain. People always better talk about the genetic gain. Okay, what is the genetic gain? So now you can, if you want to better genetic gain, you have to use all the marker, genome-wide marker for genomic selection. So linkage discipline, I have talked about that, population structure, association mapping, and association regression. So these are the summary of this. Yeah, thank you very much. It was, I was trying to put all the information so you can understand. So first one was the genomic selection, so that you understand there are different methods you can use. One thing is that I didn't mention about that, how to design your model, how to designing a model. So designing a model is very important, because you have the different methods. So for designing a model, you have to combine all the information, marker effect, phenotype effect, structure, all this effect you have to include this designing. So how you design? Either you can use R program, everybody knows R program, so you can use the R program for doing that. Either you can use the MATLAB, but MATLAB is a very expensive software, so R is the most easiest way you can do. Even you can do in the C and C++ also. So you can use this. So R is the best where you can design, because model, you know the equation of the model, you know the every formula. So by using those formula, you can design your own program, and you can use this predict your phenotype effect. So that programming you can do. Second one is the genomic selection. I have talked about mostly about the ridge regression based Bloop method, and the second was the Bayesian method, where you have to talk about the Bayes A and Bayes B method. So this is the parametric. Be remember, these are the parametric method. But suppose you want to consider multi-trait and multi-environment effect together, then you have to go for use non-parametric model also. So there are paper there, non-parametric model is, so you can use those model. So these are the different model you can use for this. Most important part in genomic selection, you need training population. You have to train your model, and that training is most important. Otherwise your prediction will be not good, you know. So that's the very most important, and that is a very dynamic process. It's not that today you develop a training population this year, next year you are keeping the same line. No, you always try to include always the superior lines, so that your prediction for using the training population will be better and better, more accurate and more accurate. Try to achieve more than 80% of accuracy in that. So that is one. Then I mentioned about that for genomic selection you need large number of marker. So you have to have a SNPs, and how we can do that? You can use the next generation sequencing technology like Illumina. I mentioned about that. You can use the Illumina technology, you can generate large number of SNP marker, and that you can use for that. Second, I mentioned about the linkage distribution, LD. LD is a very important, because that will determine what is the marker density you require for the genomic selection. So that you can do that. Structure analysis is very important, because in the case you are using the lot of breeding population. That means breeding lines are very much correlated to each other. They have some common pedigree. So all this subpopulation you have to take into the consider as a covariant. And the fourth one I discussed by association mapping, because association mapping is very important to identify the number of QTLs, position of the QTL, and effect of the QTL. Without that you cannot do. So therefore association mapping, I just very fast I describe about the different association mapping model. So mixed linear model is the most important. You can use that, where you can use either structure data along with the kinship data, or you can use principal component data and kinship data. Structured data, if you want to use, is a very time consuming. Those who are working on the, have anybody use a structured software, you see that if you have using large number of line number data, it takes longer time. Even it takes 1 month to finalize all the subpopulation, assuming subpopulation 1 to 20. It takes very long time. But principal component will give similar result, that you can do in 10 minutes. If you do cluster analysis, after cluster analysis you can do the principal component analysis, and you can do very easily, you can get data. Use that matrix along with the kinship coefficient and do the your association mapping. So these are the 4 different areas I discussed about that, you know, and I hope that it will be used for you. You know, if you have any type question, any question, you can, you know, send me email or anytime, you know, contact, you know. Yeah. Yeah, you can ask any question. So you are all students or
masters and PhD?
Master. Yeah. So terminology are very important. You know, that is the most important one. So if anybody wants to, why you want to do genomic selection? So I mentioned that is the most important. Why we want to go for genomic selection? That is the most important. A breeder which has, they say that I can detect my phenotype. I don't want any marker. You talk to the breeder. I always talk to the breeder. They say that true breeder, then I don't need any marker. I can, but the problem is that, but if you cannot now gain genetic gain, you cannot improve. That is the major problem. And to improve the genetic gain, you need to consider all the marker, effect of the all marker, and that's why it is very important. Okay, so that is the most important part of the genomic selection. Why you want to do genomic selection? Okay, yeah. Anybody knowing about this genomic selection?
Sir, in genomic selection, you said about breeding population and the training population.
Yeah.
Initially, we are starting if we are starting the genomic selection, what should be the training population?
Training population, any germplasm. Suppose I am working on the rice. You take the rice superior lines. Try to get the superior lines which are present, because those performance is very good. If you talk to the breeder, some population line may be good for the disease resistant, some quality trait. So try to take the superior line and then you genotype those lines and phenotype, and then you find out the association between your marker data and phenotypic data. That will give a model, so prediction model. On the basis of phenotype, genotype, you can develop a model. So model development is most important, because ultimately you are going to use that marker in the breeding population to select on the basis of marker data. suppose in training population, we say that this marker giving this value. So suppose in breeding you make a process, you make a random process and then you come up with the lines. So how do you know that out of in F2 you maybe have thousands of lines, but how you select at the earliest stage which line are the better? So you run the marker. So already marker has you have already see the effect of the marker. You have already predicted using the training population. Now you know that this will give this effect. So you select those lines, you remove rest of the lines. So basically training population is most important, and that you can always take about only the lines which are the superior lines. So maybe suppose 20 lines, you start with the 20 lines, suppose you have 300 or 400, you take the 20 and do the analysis. So the training population is a dynamic population. Sometimes you have to remove. Suppose somebody is giving not a good information. After association you can see that some line is not giving. So you remove those line, you come up with another line. So this is the keep on adding and removing the line so that your training population is really good, which can give the best. So how you know that this set of the training population is best result? Because in breeding population when you use the marker, because you have determined the effect of the marker in the training population, and you do the observe the value. So you observe the value of the phenotypic value and you have predicted this, and you see whether it is giving about 80% or 90% accuracy, see the accuracy. If it is giving very low accuracy, that means your training population need to be more trained, your model have to be more trained. So that's why training a model in training population is very important, and lines are very important. So now you have to remove, take another few set of the line. So training population is a dynamic process, is a very cyclic process.
Means sir, in training population, for each of the trait we have to take the different training population.
No. You can take, that's why multi-trait. You always try to go for the multi-trait. So
which are better in all the traits.
Because if you go to the breeder, they always look for disease, highly disease resistant. They always cover that they try to develop the line which has the highly resistant to most of the disease in this region or whatever. Second, they always look for the quality, good quality, has a good nutrition quality. So the breeder always develop the line basis of different good quality traits. So this is not one. If suppose that training population has so many traits showing the variation, you can target for all the traits.
Sir, for example, if yield, we have to take only the higher yielding plants, or we have to take the mixture of
you have to introduce the variation.
Okay.
Otherwise, how will you find a variation? So therefore, you look for the line, all the line, where you have representation of all type, variability should be high, genetic diversity should be very high. If you take all the high yielding, so your marker will not detect. You cannot develop a marker. So therefore, you need a diversity in the training population.
And sir, one more, the marker effect will be different for the different location. How can we deal with this?
So that's why I say that there is a non-parametric test. So there is a model, we can use that model to see the effect, multi-environment effect and multi-trait analysis. Both that you can do analysis. Okay. So that is a non-parametric, I didn't mention about that, but I just say that there is a non-parametric test, we can use that. And they came in 2008, so there is a paper by Yang in last year, it is in the Crop Journal. So in the Crop Journal 2018, they have described about the non-parametric, so where you can see the multi-environment effect. So multi-environment effect generally we we use as a covariant.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, can we use one model for all the population?
No, that's why I say try to have Bayesian A and B. That is the first you choose that one, because that is based on the simulation. So Bayesian A, Bayes A and Bayes B. Now they have come up C. Then apart from, you go for the ridge regression. That is the most 3 math. So at least you try 3-form model and see which one is giving the best one. Because
so then we generate one model, then Bayesian A will give Bayes result. Then this model utilizing all the
So once you got the one model which is the best genomic assisted breeding value, post accurate, then you can use that model. You can use that model for that. But initially you have to try all the model. You don't know in which population for which trait is giving which model is the best. It depends upon trait also. It also depends upon your population. So don't focus, stick to the one.
Sir, in which crop it is most commonly used in, sir, genomic selection?
Yeah, I have given a list of the
Maize.
slide. Maize, rice has the mostly used that, because why the maize? The group which are working on the genomic selection, they belongs to maize group. So that's why maize crop has a widely used. Rice has been used. You know, wheat has this, last year they have used in wheat also. So there are different lines coming up. So now this is coming up last 5 years. There are coming number of population they are coming. Arabidopsis they have used. It's although not a crop plant, it's a model plant. Arabidopsis they have used. So rice and corn has the mostly used corn.
Sir, what about the final product of this genomic selection?
Genomic selection final product is to identify very superior line, which has the very high prediction value. That is the one, which has a very high genetic gain, genetic effect value. So only is to decide which is the superior line, because it's a selection method. Basically it's a extension of selection method. We are using the genomic selection. The only is to identify the superior lines. That is the way.
Thank you, sir.
So you are all the genetics students, or you are coming from different fields?
Some are from biotech as well, and some are from
Acha,
vegetable science and
yeah.
food science.
But you, I think, try to go for now genomic selection. Although now you have a system. I think you don't know, but most probably NIPB is going to get a big sequencing platform here, and they are going to sequence more than 75 lines. I think DBT is funding that program. Hopefully that, so you will have opportunity to see the sequencing platform there. You know.
Any other questions? If there is no other clarifications, sir, on behalf of the students and trainees,
Yeah.
and also the coordinators, we would like to thank you for
Thank you very much.
invitation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. But your MSc student, no, you try to take your line, you know.
yeah. Emerging areas,
Genomic-
wants to pick up.
Yeah, I just give brief about myself. When I started my PhD, you know, nobody was knowing about the association mapping. It was in 96, 97. At that time I started. My professor said that you always use the advanced approach. So I was doing the QTL mapping, like a marker, you know, biparental mapping population. So then he asked me to do the association mapping, and we started, and that was the first. Nobody was working in India, nobody talking about that. So I used that, and on that basis I was selected for postdoc, because I applied for postdoc. They said nobody was, you know, doing association. You were only doing association mapping. So I got selected. I got a permanent position also as a scientist, only doing for association mapping. So always look for the advanced technology. Go for that. It doesn't mean that you leave your classical and traditional approach also. That is also very important, because genomic selection, marker selection is not a only way, because you need always help for the classical breeding. Without classical breeding you cannot do, because this is only the helping the classical breeding approach. You understand? So always you have to do classical breeding, but you take the help of the marker and genomic selection, marker selection and genomic selection. So that is the helping to the classical breeding to speed up, to have a better genetic gain. That's one. It doesn't mean the classical breeding you can't know. Classical is still important, still you have to follow that. Okay? Yeah, thank you very much.
On behalf of the organizers, we would like to have a moment of you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. So I
So
can,
we'll break for lunch, and so we are still here at 2:30.
if you want, you can take the copy of this also. If they want to go through that.
Actually, we will be, as we have joined you,
Yeah.
we will be making online